Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and today we have an absolutely amazing story that a member of TYT, who's also a mayor of a small North Carolina town, is currently under investigation for the possibility that he left fake racist notes around black neighborhoods in the town that he is the mayor of. This story is amazing. I never even got a chance to read these notes before today, and when you hear them, you might think to yourself, we have a Smollett situation. We're gonna get into this, we're gonna laugh about it, we're gonna talk about the whole thing from all the angles, but before we do, I just want to say thank you to everybody who signed up, actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
And thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform. So if you'll remember, Mondale Robinson is a recurring character that appears on Indisputable with Rashad Richey, and he was one of the people who were going after the so-called bike Karen, who, by the way, we ended up finding out did nothing wrong, as a racist pregnant thug.
Mr. Mayor, what are your thoughts here?
I think these black young men, specifically the one whose credit card was used to pull this bike out of the system, was attacked by a pregnant thug. Let's just call it what it is.
Because for some reason, this buffoonish mayor was under the belief that a pregnant 36-year-old woman coming off a shift at a hospital actually would walk up to 5 black teenagers in order to rob them for their rentable bike. Of course, this story was completely disproven. There was never an actual retraction from Mondale Robinson, although Rashad Richey had to cry on camera and say, oh, whoopsie, I got it wrong. And then, of course, he backtracked later because, you know, he's a coward, but that was Mondale Robinson's take. And by the way, after that take, I actually ended up looking into this mayor, who's the mayor of Enfield, North Carolina, a small town of like 1,700 people, and what was going on in his town. And unsurprisingly, a guy who appears on TYT's Indisputable is woefully inadequate in his role as the mayor, and he's had a ton of controversies that are absolutely astounding, but of course, not surprising. And one of the controversies has to do with what we're talking about today, because supposedly these racist notes that were left all over his town were in response to him taking down a Confederate monument.
Black mayor has been targeted, is now under criminal investigation because he decided to remove Confederate monuments that he had permission to remove. Let me go to the first video. Here it is.
Yo, it's time for this monument to come down. People voted. I tried with a hammer. That wasn't enough. So now here come the tractors. Drive it down. Yes, sirs. Yes, sirs. Yes, sirs. Death to the Confederacy around here. Push that little one over too, bro. All of it. Not in my town, not on my watch. Not in my town, not on my watch.
All right, and so for that act of leadership, Mayor Mondale was investigated.
Now look, I gotta make something 100% clear so you guys know where I stand on the Confederate monuments. I could give a damn about the Confederacy. It is not something that I've ever been interested in. I am a Northerner. I don't understand the clinging to the Confederate battle flag or anything like that. But TYT right here is being incredibly dishonest about how they're reporting the taking down of this monument, because it is in fact true that the residents of the now majority black town voted to remove this monument. However, it wasn't only a Confederate monument. It initially started out that way back in 1928 when it was put up, but part of the reason there was so much outrage, and by the way, there wasn't that much outrage, but for the outrage that existed, was because because this was the only monument that they had.
The monument began as a Confederate memorial in the 1920s, but later added plaques for veterans of other wars, causing some in the community to protest the mayor's decision to knock it down. The day after it was destroyed, Chief Ayers and the Halifax DA asked the SBI to investigate the destruction of the monument.
This became a monument to other wars that happened after the Civil War and had moved beyond the Confederacy. So when you see Mondale Robinson, who was supposed to remove this monument because that's what the citizens and their elected officials voted for, destroy it for Facebook clout, understand that he's not only destroying the Confederate part of the monument, but he's destroying the World War I, World War II, people who died in Vietnam, and so on this monument as well, because that's what it became over time. Obviously, this should have been treated with a little bit more sensitivity, but since Mayor Mondale Robinson is somebody who just wants to tear down institutions and doesn't care about the United States of America, he does this for Facebook clout, and then he starts complaining about the hatred that he got in response to it.
He's talking about this, an email from the Halifax Sheriff's Office obtained by WREL. These are the times the town of Enfield will not have an officer working, it says. Deputies will be paid overtime through the county to cover the shifts below. It goes on to list every weekday shift from today until the end of the month.
Now look, the fact that Mondale Robinson destroyed not only a Confederate monument, but a monument to other people who died in wars post the Civil War for likes on Facebook shows you a lot about his character, but he's also a woefully incompetent mayor. Since he took office, they have not been able to fund a police department, and he's essentially been going around begging other officers to patrol his area because that's how pathetic he is at doing his own job. He can't even maintain a police force, which again, for one of these defund, abolish the police types, you might say, not surprising that's the goal, but it's one thing for you to not have your own police department, it's a completely other thing for you to demand that other officers patrol your area because you're too incompetent to spend the money appropriately to field your own department.
It's their job. I mean, they're the county sheriff. They're there to patrol by North Carolina general statute. They patrol every locale in the county, in their county purviews. And also it was promised by the state that they would have, between the sheriff and also the state troopers, that we would, the highway patrol, that we would have adequate coverage in Enfield.
But let's be clear, those are side issues on how incompetent Mondale Robinson is as a mayor. Obviously, the proof is self-evident in that regard. Obviously, he's an ego-driven person, but according to him, it was hatred that was post him removing this monument, which again, he did for Facebook likes, that really became a problem for him and for the people in his town. And while I do believe he got some angry emails, probably some angry phone calls, because again, the whole point of removing this monument on Facebook Live was for him to get some attention and then for him to play the victim when somebody on the internet would do something like that. However, he also claims that there were a bunch of notes that were thrown around black neighborhoods that had racist messages on it, and this is what it appears that North Carolina is actually investigating. And by the way, when you hear these notes being read, which I'm going to let the TYT host that's defending him read these notes, you're going to understand why this is a bit suspicious.
According to the mayor, FBI was at his mother's house to investigate him, a bombshell, which he says is in regards to those racist leaflets being left around town after the monument removal last year. There's a reminder, the text of it: white people of Enfield, you have let an N tyrant stomp on your heritage. What will you do? Don't let them get away with anything. Signed, the loyal white knights.
Now look, I'm not the mayor of Enfield. I am not Mondale Robinson. I'm not just gonna go and run wild with allegations that benefit me politically. But what I will say is that this note already reads incredibly suspicious, and if I would have saw the initial news segment on this that TYT did, it would have brought up those same red flags. So these notes were left in specifically black neighborhoods in this town, but they're addressed to white people, and they tell white people what are they going to do about the black N-word mayor who destroyed their heritage and their history, so already a little bit suspicious. On top of that, if Mondale Robinson is behind this, him signing it the White Knights, which is like a branch of the KKK, I assume, is something that ultimately will prove to be his undoing, because when you blame an organization specifically, the police can go investigate that organization, and if they find no evidence that any member of that organization participated in that, all of a sudden the conversation becomes not about whether or not they did it, but who is aware of them, who's obsessed with race, and who likely would be trying to pin this on him. And since the KKK exists the most in the mind of these woke race-baiting race hoaxers, Obviously, that would lead us to believe it would be Mondale Robinson if we were the investigators. Now, again, I want to emphasize this has not been proven, but there is more to these notes that, again, just bring up a bit of red flags. I'm just saying.
An entire black neighborhood's yards were littered with these filthy messages. Ziploc baggies with bird seed to weigh them down. So somebody spent a lot of time. It mattered to them.
So I will also say this could be the undoing of Mondale as well. The fact that these messages were typed up, the fact that there's bird seed in these bags, the fact that they were in Ziploc bags could prove to us that he was the purchaser of any of these combination of items. And maybe the reason why they visited his mother's house is because his mother might have had the bird seed on the premises. His sister, who was also apparently visited, according to this article, could also have it there. So there actually could be a forensic trail that ends up proving that Mondale Robinson is behind this. And because, again, the notes blamed a specific subsection of the KKK, and it would be easy for the investigators who did investigate this all the way back from last year to determine if members of those organizations bought the bird seed, bought the Ziploc bags, that then you could try to match the bird seed to what they may or may not have bought. He might have opened himself up, sown the seeds of his own destruction. A little bit of irony right there, since we're talking about bird seeds, and this might ultimately end up leading to his capture. And by the way, again, all alleged. We don't know. I mean, Mondale Robinson is somebody who enjoys a good race hoax, but he might not be courageous enough to try to initiate one himself.
The message on the flyer was printed and claimed to be from the Loyal White Knights with a hotline phone number leading to a voicemail. According to research, the group is a chapter of the KKK headquartered in Pelham, North Carolina. Flyer also listed a website that did not exist when entered and had a podcast listing as well as 100% Americanism. Pray for white Americans. And a message for people to read: the US Supreme Court decision on Hague versus Committee for Industrial Organization in 1939. The details there from the Daily Herald.
Look, I'm not saying that Mondale Robinson did this for a fact. I'm not actually making the case because I'm going to wait, and I'm willing to wait for the investigation to conclude before I cover the final outcome of this case. But what I am saying is I understand why the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation has focused their sights on him. Everything in that paragraph is incredibly suspicious. Again, who is more obsessed with the Ku Klux Klan than people who focus on race as much as Mondale Robinson? Who is likely to misspell or do something wrong when it comes to a website link so that link would lead to nothing? Who would link such generic things like this specific podcast that is like Pray for White America or something like that, except for somebody who's obsessed with race and doesn't really understand how these racist organizations or people think? Who would then follow it up with an obscure civil rights related case or an obscure Supreme Court case that is not known to be a prominent civil rights case like the one that's cited here. This all sounds like somebody from the left doing this.
The message on the flyer was printed and claimed to be from the Loyal White Knights with a hotline phone number leading to a voicemail. According to research, the group is a chapter of the KKK headquartered in Pelham, North Carolina.
And again, because of that specific mentioning of a specific chapter of the KKK, the North Carolina SBI, who's been investigating this since the last year, can go to the members of that organization, run their financial transactions, see if any of them bought an inordinate amount of birdseed, see on their computers if they were the one to type up these notes, see if they bought the Ziploc bags, see if those purchases all happened at the same time. They could match the birdseed if they did find that some of them or any of them ended up buying it. And it looks like at this point in the investigation, if they've turned their sights on Mondale, that they've already done that and they've already cleared every member of the organization. And once you clear the chapter of the Klan that is being blamed for this or is perceived to be taking credit for this, the issue then becomes, okay, if they're not actually behind this, who would want you to think that this chapter of the Klan would be behind it? And obviously, once you get to that point in the investigation, if you're good at investigating, you would know that the key beneficiary of this, the person who's getting the fame and the attention, the person who was on national TV as recently as last week, still talking about how the state, the white supremacist state of North Carolina, is not backing him up on this, would be Mondale Robinson. Again, he is the mayor of a town of 1,700 people. Even that Facebook live stream didn't get a lot of attention, and that really doesn't add up to a situation where you're in an overwhelmingly majority black town, 1,700 people, that somebody would go out of their way to do this to a black neighborhood. Obviously, this is incredibly suspicious. I'm not saying it's 100%. I'm not Mondale Robinson. I'm not the one who makes assertions without facts, but it looks like I understand exactly why they're investigating this.
Mayor Robinson noted that the leaflets were not left in his yard. However, he got some different messages, multiple threatening emails and letters delivered to his home and office. Okay.
Now, the TYT segment pivots away from this note because focusing on the notes, not a really good look for Mondale Robinson, to a bunch of emails and whatnot. And by the way, I can say for a fact that it's likely that somebody on the internet would send him hateful messages because that happens all the time. I get threats, called all kinds of things. So the fact that he's on Indisputable probably brought him some kind of outsized attention from an internet audience. But what we're talking about is somebody who went to this small town, wasn't seen as suspicious by anybody, left these notes all over the place, and then they were directed again at Mr. Mondale Robinson because he took down this monument that, again, locally is probably not a story that gained all that much traction.
So I talked to some friends at the ACLU today about this case. They are not happy by the evidence presented so far and how it is contextualized in a way that creates a narrative to say that the mayor committed crimes against himself, when it is well documented that there are many, many groups who have been opposite of the mayor, openly so, threatening him, sending hate mail, sending messages via social media. You see, it takes courage to stand up for what is right.
Now look, I'm not saying that this is evidence. In fact, this is the opposite of evidence, but it is a good indication that you might be in trouble if you're Mondale Robinson, because Rashad Richey is now crying over the fact that they're investigating him, talking about these various groups that are going after this mayor of a town of like 1,700 people that's majority black, because he has so many enemies, because he's standing up, and because he has all this courage. Very few people in this entire country have bought into more race hoaxes than Rashad Richey. He is a complete and utter buffoon, a complete and utter failure in assessing character, in having good judgment on these kind of cases. So the fact that he's now resorting to crying, pretending like, oh no, I can't imagine a black person perpetuating a hoax, when he's bought into so many of them and barely ever produces any retractions, it just does not look good. I'm just saying, if you're willing to bet money and throw it on the table on a case that Rashad Richey covers on the opposite side of him on those cases, chances are you're going to get a return on that bet. Chances are Rashad Richey's going to be in the wrong column and you're going to be in the correct column. And by the way, I'm downloading all of these videos. I'm saving 100% of them. Even videos that I'm not using in this video, I'm going to save, because if this turns out to be proven, I'm going to laugh and laugh and laugh, and I'm going to play all these reactions for you, and we're all going to have a good time. And by the way, if they actually catch this secret hidden member of the local KKK, I will actually report it, because as I said, this is all alleged. Even the existence of the investigation is alleged. He's not been arrested, so it's not even formally alleged. He's just a suspect in this, but it does seem like it is a likely possibility based on his personal pattern of behavior and based on the fact that everybody he associates with, who always gets race hoaxes wrong, is completely on his side and pretending like this is an asinine proposition. I look forward to Mondale Robinson potentially getting busted for this in the future, going in shame, because that's honestly what this kind of guy deserves. He wanted to be the biggest, most famous mayor, the best victim in all of the country, in all of small town mayoring.
This is not fantasy. This is not a game. This is not a reality show. This is not a skit. These are not actors and actresses. These are real people.
Oh, it's so good. I honestly, Rashad, I genuinely have love for you in my heart. The fact that you're overcommitting, that you're doubling down on this is amazing. This is like Ellen Page talking about Jussie Smollett. Now, again, nothing's been proven. They're just starting their investigation. But as I said earlier in this video, if members of the organization named as a part of this had the purchases for birdseed or anything similar that would tie them to the scene, they would have already come out with this. Obviously, it looks like they concluded that none of them did have any connection to this, so that only leaves a few people that could be behind this hoax.
Now, if you thought that this investigation was going to cause me or anyone at Indisputable or the circle that extends beyond it to distance themselves from my dear brother, think again. This has caused me to get him closer, knowing the level of fight you all are trying to bring to his doorstep by going to his parents' home.
Now look, I don't have a lot more to say about this except place your bets on the odds that Mondale Robinson is behind this down in the comments of this video. Let me know your thoughts. Or do you think that them investigating him for the hoax is in fact the hoax and he's actually not telling the truth about this? Now, we do have some confirmation from his sister and from his mother, so I do think they are actually investigating this. So to me, is this potential hoax an actual hoax? Is Mondale Robinson behind it? Those are the real questions. Or maybe you are under the belief that this chapter of the KKK was actually behind this. They did do it, and this is all white supremacist North Carolina teaming up with them in order to go after a courageous mayor, and we should all cry about it like Rashad Richey. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I look forward to reading them. As usual, if you liked the video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a TYT host going full Smollett, maybe. Till next time.